last 72 hours seem like a bad dream.
Welcome back to the Final Girls. Welcome to episode 6. Welcome, welcome. How are you today, Minx? How has your week been?
My week's been fine. Been a very busy week, but not too bad, you know.
Yeah. I saw you you streamed Janitor Bleeds. We didn't get to finish that all the way through. What did you think of that?
It was all right. Like, it was above average. I wouldn't say it was amazing, but it was all right. Like, it was worth a play. Yeah. A little
Yeah.
frustrating at times, but not too bad.
Okay, have you played Happy's Humble Burger Farm?
I have not. I own it, and I
You
bought it, and I never got around to playing it.
Do it. Hey, no, you don't understand. It's so good.
Okay.
It's hilariously good. We've really been having a good time on the stream with that game the last couple of streams, and I'm going to keep going with it. And it's a very genuinely well involved. You played Control, right?
Yeah, I really like Control.
Okay, what I loved about Control in games like that is that it has this like augmented reality aspect where you get like promotional stuff, ads and propaganda for the companies and the things that appear in the game. Do you know what I mean? Like you got all the cool researchy videos in Control, and all the like stuff about all the weird SCP like objects and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you get sort of the same thing in like the Happy game, but like for Happy's Humble Burger Farm, and just like how much I'm not going to spoil anything for you, despite the spoiler alert there. But like you get a scope of just how much control they exert over the in-game world, and it's like really, really well done. So I highly recommend it.
I did play the demo, I think, ages ago, and that ended on like a weird sort of SCP style note, so
Yes.
that would be interesting to see. Yeah, I must admit the reason I didn't play it is I'm not a big fan of like mascot horror type stuff a lot of times. So like I was always worried it would be a bit like that. Like I
No.
hate FNAF and shit like that. You
No,
know what I mean?
no, I hate FNAF, okay? I hate FNAF, so I totally, like, I'm on the same page there with you. And I was a little cautious when we first started. I was like, oh, I hope this won't be some FNAF jump scare bullshit. And no, it's very much far removed from that formula. Big recommend.
For real, I reckons I'll struggle with the burger making part. I just realized, right? Did you play the newest Chiller's Art game, the one where you make coffee?
Can I, Minx,
The
Minx, can I
opening
get
to-
you,
was it
chill, can I get you a chocolate chip chillipuccino, Minx? Can I go and make you one right fucking now and then kill myself? Just fall on a blade right in front of you? Can I do that?
Yeah.
Great. Yeah.
I nearly went insane doing that. It took me ages to grasp just the basics of what I had to do before I got the hang of it.
I watched the videos in that fucking game so many times. I took a picture of the in-game board in the back room that had like all the recipes.
Yeah.
And I still fucked up and I still got it wrong somehow. But to be fair, like Chilla's art games are always very obtuse in sort of a good way.
I didn't like that one. Well, actually, it's not true. I liked everything up until the bit where you have to escape the guy at the end because it was like set up to fuck you.
Yeah, I got killed like a bunch of times trying.
Yeah, same here. I got really angry at the end just because it was like, what the fuck do I do? Getting the actual proper ending is just bullshit.
Did
know
you
what I mean?
plop
I
a
did
brick
it.
on his head? Did you?
Yeah, in the end I did. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just annoying. It was
He
annoying
still
to get
gets
to that
you.
point. Yeah.
And he still gets you in the end. He was like lurking. There's no canon good ending for your character in that game, I don't think. Is there?
Yeah.
But then
No,
there.
it's just shit. It's just. Well, I mean, the ending was awful. Like the game was great until the ending. Like,
Yeah.
I there's some Chiller's Art games I really like. By the way, it's not like I hate Chiller's Art. There's just some I like and some I don't. You know?
I'm a huge
I-
Chilla's fan. Although
feel
some
they
of them
vary.
are oof.
They vary. You know?
They release like shit like the slit mouthed stuff. They release like kind of lesser chase bullshit games to fund these more complicated ones, I think.
I actually kind of like Akamanto and Yuki Onna just because I actually managed to beat them without dying, and I was so proud of myself. I got the
All
true
right,
ending on both of them.
Fair enough. Honest, if you manage to achieve a feat like that, I can't hold that against you. Those games
Losing
are
my
awful.
mind on Yuki Onna, it was terrifying
I
by
don't
the
have
end
the
because she's like she takes up
patience.
like the entire corridor by the end, and she's just like huge and dangerous.
Oh man, I don't usually have the patience for either like the chase while you're trying to gather some bullshit to put something together or to escape or to whatever. It's not usually my cup of tea. And like the FNAF stuff too, trying to watch surveillance wise around your environment really.
I think I like the Caregiver the most so far. I think it was the best balance of story and running away from shit. Like I thought that was pretty
Which one?
good.
Sorry?
The Caregiver.
The Caregiver. Oh yes. Oh, I love Care. That was the one where you go and you're the personal support worker for like the old man in the house.
And there's
Yeah.
like a Tengu in the basement of
Yes.
the.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that. That's one of my favorite ones. I like the missing children one as well.
Oh, I vaguely, yeah, I think I got the bad ending on that, and I was like, I'm not doing this again. But I can't remember what happened. I do remember the game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and yeah, I pretty much keep an eye. I wish that Steam had a better way of following developers. I know that you can follow individual projects, but I don't think there's a way on Steam, unless somebody can correct me here, that you can follow a developer overall to see what upcoming stuff they have coming
yeah,
out. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And I'd love that because there's Chillas I'd follow and a few others that I really enjoyed. So yeah, it would be a nice little feature to put on there. All right.
yeah.
Yeah. All that said, I think we're good. Why don't we get on into the
The
news
show,
today?
because that
The
wasn't part
show.
of the show. That
That
was
was
just an
it.
extra bit. That was an
Yeah.
extra bit, guys. An
It's
extra
just
feature.
a little bit of foreplay, a little bit of edging before the show. Yeah. Very romantic. All right.
Beautiful.
Wonderful. Okay, let's get on into the news proper for the day for all your fun horror-related, hard-hitting news. I think we've talked a little bit of Anne Rice before, Interview with the Vampire, Queen of the Damned.
Yeah,
It's part of a
yeah,
that was part of my childhood edgy horror lineup. Mm?
yeah.
Yeah, a lot of
We talked about Queen of the Damned and how both of us thought it was good, even though it's probably not that
it's
good. You know what I
probably
mean?
not that good. Did you have Forsaken stuck in your head? For like
I was obsessed with the
da
soundtrack to
da
that movie.
da
Yeah,
da da da. Fuck! I went around singing that as a very edgy teenager. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And now we're getting a blast from the past as Hollywood power backs another classic, or I don't know, it might be good. Casting looks pretty all right. Let's see what AMC has to share about their upcoming series. Sam Reed takes over the role of Lestat de Lioncourt in AMC's upcoming Interview with the Vampire series, a brand new small screen telling of Anne Rice's vampire saga. Additionally, Jacob Anderson is Louis, Eric Bogosian is Daniel Malloy, and Bailey Bass is Claudia in the upcoming series. And we've got some new images for you today. Now, those images do come courtesy of People.com, and they're exclusive, so I won't be sharing those from People.com on the stream today, because that might be an issue. These were the
people.com.
I know. These are from Bloody Disgusting, so that's fine. Yeah, so People.com giving us a fresh look at Sam Reed's Lestat, as well as Louis, and the other characters we'll be meeting later this year. Find the images below. You'll have to go on People.com to find them yourselves. Roland Jones, that's Friday Night Lights, is creating, showrunning, and writing the series, which is expected to take a bite out of AMC and AMC Plus sometime in 2022. And Alan Taylor's directing the first 2 of 7 total first season episodes. And the rest of the main characters have already been cast. Again, Jacob Anderson, that's Grey Worm from Game of Thrones, will be playing Louis. What do you think of that?
I have. It's very hard to picture him not as the character from Game of Thrones, to be honest with you.
Right?
Yeah, it's like a risk of typecast. I feel when you're in, not even typecast, but just a risk of people seeing your character as one way once you've been in something as like iconic, I guess, of Game of Thrones. Well, at least iconic up until the end, but you know what I mean.
The Bela Lugosi effect. You're forever
Yes.
Dracula. In this case, forever Grey Worm. But I don't know. I mean, to be honest, he kind of shares. He works for me as the vampire Louis. Anderson and Brad Pitt, who is like the original Louis, have like a very similar quality. A kind of how do I put a delicate beauty of the face. Okay. They both have very like delicate faces, and I think that was what drew Lestat to Louis in the first place. To be honest, for me it's Bogosian here as Lestat. You can see him in the image. I'm a bit torn on. He doesn't really strike me at first glance the way Tom Cruise did. Tom Cruise had this weird ethereal beauty to him too. I don't know. What do you think of him as Lestat? I don't,
Yeah, I'm not
I
particularly
don't,
sold, if I'm honest with you.
I don't
Like,
feel it.
I don't feel it. Like, I guess, like, when I think of Lestat, right, I literally think of like Tom Cruise and Stuart Townsend,
Yeah,
right? Like that's because
yeah.
I felt they played him very well as a character. So I don't know. It's tough boots to fill, really, in that case. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
But we'll see what happens, I guess.
We'll see.
It's a great story. So there's definitely things they could be really good. Like it's an excellent story. So
What do I know the new Claudia from? What has she She's very familiar, but I don't
I don't know who
recognize
she
her.
is.
I don't know. But she kind of looks the part as well, although that was who was that? That was Kristen Dunst?
Yeah, it was
Was
Kirsten Dunst, is that, yeah?
I think it was. Yeah, I kind of forgot.
She
God,
was
she's
she
so
was she
young.
must have been pretty young when she was in that
Yeah,
role, right? Like
very.
significantly younger than the actress who's playing her this time around, it looks like.
Yeah, actually, I kind of iffy on that. They've aged her up a little bit, and I
Because
don't
like
know.
part of like the character is the fact that she has like she's stuck as a child, right?
Yeah.
And she resents the fact that she can never be like, you know, like a sexually active adult after hundreds of years alive, sort of thing. You know what I
Yeah, I
mean?
mean that would drive you insane. You can't. Your mind develops, but your body stays the same. And I think
Yeah.
at one point, as a result, it drives her so mad she tries to. Yeah, she tried to kill Lestat, right? She
Yeah,
tried.
she tries to kill like she's like possibly one of the most psychotic of the characters because she delights in it, like the only way she can get like pleasure in the end is like just killing basically.
Sadism and killing. Yeah,
Yeah, because whereas Lestat and what is his name?
Louis.
And Louis, they're very much focused on like, you know, getting by in society and taking what they need, but not like drawing too much attention to themselves, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Um, a bit like the masquerade, I guess, right?
yeah.
You
Not
know, but
revealing the masquerade. That's right. Yeah.
whereas she just doesn't care. Like she there's like I think I'm pretty sure there's a sequence in the first film where she lures like I want to say like prostitutes back to the place and kills them.
Oh yeah.
Or yeah, she bites them and then Lestat has to physically kill them because she isn't strong enough or something like that.
And at one
Like
point, she actually kills, I don't know if it was a prostitute, but she like kills someone. And then they only find out about it once the body starts rotting in her room under a bunch of plushies.
yeah.
That was in the movie.
Yeah. She does. She's really fucked up. Like she's probably one
Yeah.
of my favorite characters in it. Actually, she's really horrible.
She's great. Oh, yeah. I mean, but like understandable, all things considered. I don't like, I'll never really figure out why Lestat chose to turn her. I never really got, I mean, that was it. That wasn't allowed anyway in that universe.
Yeah.
That's why she was killed later on. So yeah.
It's the original movie is well worth a watch. It's one of the
Oh yeah.
best like vampire movies made. It's excellent.
Yeah.
She was 11 when the movie was filmed. There's some fucked up stuff in that movie for an 11-year-old to be saying and doing. Jesus Christ.
Actually, it's, you know, we were talking about gothic horror on the last episode, and I would say that movie is solid gothic,
Oh yeah, for sure.
romantic
I would say
horror.
it's,
Yeah,
I'd say it's very it's like American Gothic is what it is.
yeah,
It's like it's almost one of the pioneering examples of it in movies anyway.
yeah.
Um,
She's a very tragic character. That's, and we do need more kind of vampire tragedy. You know, it's funny. I saw, like, I recently watched Zombie Tragedy with the I can't remember the name of the movie. It was the one where Schwarzenegger plays the father of the girl slowly turning into a zombie. And somebody in the chat will know. But it's interesting to sort of have a different perspective on some of these monsters. Vampires they're like more romanticized than something like a zombie. So seeing like a tragedy, gothic, romantic approach is not like a huge difference. Maggie, thank you. That's the name of the movie, Maggie. But for something like a zombie, it was very refreshing and interesting. So yeah, I'm gonna check out the show. You're gonna check out the show. I'm gonna give
yeah,
it a
probably
while.
will. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm a really big fan of the original work, so I definitely will check it out. And Interview with the Vampire, like you said, is it's just a great tragic horror,
Hmm.
and I think it's a way better. Like I like the Vampire Lestat, like I probably liked it for edgy reasons, and
Yeah.
I like Queen of the Damned, and I like that for edgy reasons.
Mm.
But Interview with the Vampire is like much more dark and tragic than those. Whereas you know I feel like Queen of the Damned is kind of just like silly, you know, a bit, you know what I mean? Like let's start a vampire rock band,
Yeah.
lol, to tell the world.
It had like a really, admittedly, very different vibe from Interview,
It has a
yeah.
massively different vibe.
It's like somebody got, I don't know, somebody did some drugs and played some rock music and wrote that, I don't know, over a weekend.
Yeah, it's very it's very interesting. But still, yeah, I definitely and hope I'd like to see it pay. I'd like to see a lot more of Anne Rice's universe like paved. Like I said before, my favorite book is Memorac the Devil, and I'd love to see that. Like that is in that, but it's like, you know.
Yeah, I'd like to see some of the more offshoot stuff as well. And yes, actually, Darko in the chat, the bit in the movie where she tries to cut her hair and it keeps growing back. Yes, and how like really traumatized she is by that. That's actually a
Yeah,
really
she's
good
stuck. It's such an
example.
interesting thing to explore, right? Like
Yeah.
the concept of someone being a child forever, but absolutely despising that. You know, it's like the opposite of like Peter Pan, right? Isn't it?
Yes.
It's like
Dark
it's
Peter
like
Pan.
Yeah, it's like Dark Peter
Yeah.
Pan. It's like I'm stuck in this fucking kid's body when my brain has gone to the point where I'm an adult and I'm wanting all these adult things, but I can't because I'm a kid and I
Yeah.
can't ever grow out of it because my body forces this on me because I'm dead. You know,
Yeah.
it's really fucking an interesting exploration. It's pretty fucked up, obviously, but you know, it's an interesting thing to
Yeah, well,
portray. You know what I
it's
mean?
like a more direct, it's a more direct version of something like the Peter Pan story, where I think you have to look at fridge horror in Peter Pan to sort of make the connections of why it would be really fucked up and horrible to actually be one of Peter's boys. Whereas, yeah, with Claudia, it's like a little more on the nose.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I really like that. All right. So let's get on into the next segment. Let's get on into the tropes. Let's talk some tropes in horror. Welcome to Terror Tropes. Tropes are defined as the use of a figurative language via word, phrase, or image for artistic effect, such as using a figure of speech or something more colorful to define a common element. And tonight's trope of choice is God is evil. You'd think so with the current.
Is this just a factually accurate statement on the screen? Or...
Tell me how you really feel. You love Minx. Tell me how much you love Jesus, Minx.
I'm a huge fan.
Are you a huge fan of Jesus?
He's amazing. He's amazing.
You love him. You pray
Coming up
on
to
your
Easter.
rosary
Can't
every
wait.
day. Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah,
Can't wait for Easter. It's
can't
great.
wait for. You're may I ask you? Are you an atheist or what? What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm
to be fair,
agnostic atheist.
That's how
So.
I came across your stuff. Really, actually, was like back
Yeah, the
in the
early
day,
rant
like,
shit. Yeah.
the early rant shit you did. Like,
Oh, I big pissed off some people with that stuff.
I bet you did, but that was like peak atheist YouTube, right? Like,
Oh,
I'm sure
yeah.
you watched TJ and stuff
Oh,
like
hell
that.
yeah,
like, and was like,
yeah.
This
All
is
the
like
edgy
good
shit.
You know what I mean? All the
the
edgy shit back
all
then.
the edgy shit. I unapologetically cleavage ranting on atheism with like really peppy background music. Unapologetically. That was peak YouTube, I think.
It was like the atheist era.
The atheist era, yes, it was. All right, so tonight, God is evil. Yeah, it might be a true statement. The trope. Let's see. Read the summary first. The trope comes into play when the supreme deity of a given setting is not just a mere jerkass. They are actively malevolent, a jealous, callous, sadistic, monstrous tyrant who created the world or universe to be such a miserable crapsack world, preparing disproportionate retribution and an easy road to hell for everybody else. The classic problem of evil tends to be invoked in this trope, along with the irrationality of religious extremism. People foolish enough to try a religious Russian roulette to get a god like this to answer their prayers are unlikely to like the result. In some works, this being is the supreme deity of a fantasy pantheon, while in others, the being is a powerful monotheistic deity, with some works casting the big guy himself or his nearest fantasy analog in the role. Sometimes the being calling itself God or the God isn't one, often to lessen the offense that religious readers might obviously feel when this trope comes into play. Its powers are just so close to omnipotent that it makes no difference. Narrations about God that is both omnipotent and malevolent, and how we puny humans can cope with its abominable existence, can result in a cosmic horror story which is based on the complete helplessness and despair of us puny earthlings under the powers of an alien reality-warping, madness-inducing entity. But while the eldritch abominations are your average cosmic horror story, in your average cosmic horror story will at least leave you alone if you don't seek them out, most of the time anyway, a malevolent supreme god can be an absolute nightmare, scrutinizing our every thought and toying with us against our will, with us having little to no hope in doing anything about it. And I'm sure that's somebody's kink. What do you
Probably
think?
is.
What do you think, big mean god?
Punish me, God. Punish me, Daddy God.
Punish me,
Ooh.
Dad. Beer Daddy.
Smite me. Give me a good
smite.
smite.
Me, Supreme Beer Daddy. Oh my God. This is forever. That's it. That's a peak show. It will never get... Okay. Sure. You can't... All right, to be fair, you can't really talk evil gods, I think, without dipping into my fan favorite Lovecraft. I'm sorry. I'm just going to find any excuse to mention Daddy. I'm just any excuse. I'm sorry. I'd
like that picture more if the tentacle went in one ear and out the other.
It should have been. I mean, this is by Junji Ito, by the way.
I remember this. From
yeah. He took a little turn at drawing some Lovecraftian shit of his own. You can find that if you search for it. I would love a full Lovecraft manga by Ito. That would be great. with like all based on more directly on his work rather than inspired by. That'd be really cool. Anyway, I could fill like this whole segment with gods ranging from like ones that are totally indifferent to mankind to ones that would, I don't know, use your bones to pick their teeth. There are very, very few benign options in the Lovecraftian pantheon. Maybe one or two gods that would be like, oh yeah, I guess humanity's okay, whatever, and that might be your best bet. But the scope of Lovecraft's gods is so great that an emotion like hell, like hate, wouldn't even factor into our destruction come the end. It might factor in, to be fair, with somebody like Nyarlathotep, who tends to keep like a closer finger on the pulse of humanity than a lot of the other outer gods. But for the most part, I don't think emotion would factor in for too many of the others. Anime, I think, is one of the more prevalent sources of evil gods. You probably know, you watch your fair share of anime, so you probably
Me?
yeah.
What?
No, you don't. You've never heard. May I recommend some Digimon?
Oh wow, I've never heard of that before.
No.
Moon.
Moon. All right. Well, yeah, you can probably. There's
Yeah, my
probably a
favorite
fair
anime
share.
is Legend of Korra.
Oh, are there evil gods in it? Hey, wait a minute. You tricked me. Wait a minute. Legend of Korra. That's a little American. That's a little on the nose. Ooh. Oh, by the way, chat, in case you're wondering, these pictures here, some people have asked me before. This is from Wombo. It's an app to make AI versions of like keywords you put in and different styles of art, and it's really cool. Like it makes some really creative shit. Like I put Nyarlathotep here, and I forget which. I think I chose vibrant as the style here, and this is what it gave me. Out of all the shit that it,
It's like he's in Ghostwire actually. It looks very that aesthetic.
yeah, I like it because it's like proper to what I imagine when I think of Lovecraft visuals, where like something wouldn't be very solid and make very much sense. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Okay, so the anime, good example of that. I think we seldom see out and out very good deities in anime. More often than not, we have gods with like less than stellar plans for mankind or out and out haters of humanity. I think you like Dragon Ball, right? That's not.
Yeah, I mean, I've actually.
It's not horror, but you
I've never seen Dragon Ball the anime, but I played through the games and I
Really?
know the story from the games. So
you're just
that's how
not
I know it.
interested in the anime, or
It just was a bit. The animation always looked shit at the time. So like,
to be fair, yeah, I feel the same way. But
I know the story of Dragon Ball, and I really like the game. So
yeah, or Angel Sanctuary is another good example with how like
whenever I'm like, you should watch a wholesome anime like Angel Sanctuary, something I say a lot. Even
hey, you know, Berserk, you should watch. There's a pony in that show. There's if you like horses, there's a horse.
Angel Sanctuary is a beautiful story of familial bonding, in my
opinion. Yeah, that's a beautiful story about a love for a brother for a sister.
Exactly.
There's nothing wrong with that, Chad. Ain't you seen Frozen? That was a sister and her sister. What's wrong with you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Monokuma could be an example of a deity, actually, I guess. Like, I mean, he has, like, the powers of a deity, right?
Yeah,
Do you know who Monokuma is? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't, like the summary also said, like, it doesn't necessarily have to out and out be identified as a god, but just, like, so powerful, it's, like, the closest common denominator to humanity as a god. So, like, even if it's not necessarily a deity, that still counts. I think not all of these cases feature gods responsible for the creation of man either, and that's kind of along the lines too. One of my favorite actually does, or at least represents the fundamental law that underlines mankind, that ironically mankind enforced on itself in a really fucked up way. And speaking of, you guys ever hear of Berserk? Yeah, I know I hardly ever mention this obscure little known manga. You've never heard of Berserk?
I can't believe that you hate women.
By
putting this image on screen.
Excuse me, you filthy little god hand pick me. Have you got a problem? You want to go out back? You want to enact some? I choose violence. Let's go.
I mean, Berserk definitely chooses violence.
Fuck yeah.
Non-stop.
Constantly violence. Yeah, tonight I want to talk about the elusive non-canon chapter of the manga, though. Kentaro Miura canonized this chapter when he was still alive for reasons of like over-revelation. It would tell you'd know too much, which was too early, which was a shame, really, because it adds this great layer of philosophy to like why the world in Berserk is the way that it is, and that is very disturbing, like you said, very fucked up. Which is saying something considering the awful shit that happens, yeah, pretty much constantly in this story, because the non-canon chapter introduces the idea of evil, this creature, which can be summed up by a statement made by the idea of evil itself, and that is obeying the will of the essence of humankind, I weave every man's destiny. Which means that not only is the god in the Berserk universe evil, it's pretty much everything that we need it to be. It's not like a self-driven force, really. It's not evil because it wants to be or because it harbors ill will, which is especially dramatic considering, like you said, how violent, like insanely violent the world of Berserk is. And you know, it's funny that I mentioned Berserk since the last episode, because you can parallel, I think, the idea of evil to Am, of I have no mouse, no mouse. I have no mouse and I must scram.
Jeez.
Yes, cheese, Ches. I have no mouth and I must scream. And Harlan Ellison was also a subject last episode. And like the idea of evil, the hell of Ellison's universe was also self-made by its victims, by humankind. Although with more intent than it was in the Berserk universe, where it was more of a subconscious need that manifested into being. Mankind needed a reason for suffering and pain and death and hatred in Berserk, and so they manifested the idea of evil, which then propagated a self-sustaining reason for all of those things itself, and became, I guess, essentially a perpetual motion machine of torment, which is really something. I think another good example of the evil god trope is 40K. Are you a Warhammer 40K fan?
I mean, I know some aspects of it. It's been a long time since I was like, I don't really know like the modern lore and stuff, but I've read books and shit when I was younger, you know. Is this Gorka Morka or something?
This is, who this?
Yeah.
This is Nurgle. This is the great...
Oh, it's Nurgle. Oh my god, sorry, the god of decay, right?
It's okay, yeah.
I thought they were orcs for a minute. I was like, they're Nurglings.
No, beautiful, pestilent daddy god. Here. And I kind of have like a basic understanding of the 40K universe too. Like my interests there with the lore lie with the forces of chaos and the warp and
same.
All the nasty shit that can happen if your shields fall or whatever. I love all that stuff. But here we have another excellent example of a lot of evil gods. And it even feeds back a little into gods born of the power of the human subconscious. Slaanesh is a really excellent example of that. I mean, I know they're not associated to humans specifically in the 40K universe. That's like dark elves or something, I think it is. But the thing about all these examples so far is that they weren't birthed by any means of their own. And what defines them, even as some are antithetical to human life, isn't necessarily to destroy us. That was just an injection of our own self-hatred into them. And this next example, I think I would call the antithesis to that idea. And that was presented in the 1997 film The Devil's Advocate.
Oh, I love that movie.
Yeah, me too. Early baby Keanu Reeves, man. Wow.
He looks very different there, yeah.
He's so young. He's almost just barely recognizable. But yeah, that was an excellent movie. Another callback to childhood horror. And I'm glad they've never like remade or they didn't have a sequel to this or anything, did they?
No, it's just a standalone movie, I think. At least from what I recall.
Yeah. Now, you might take the following description with a grain of salt, considering it was presented by that film's literal devil, played by Al Pacino. But you might imagine he's not lying this time, considering the trope. Here's what Satan had to say about God in that movie. Let me give you a little inside information about God. God likes to watch. He's a prankster. Think about it. He gives man instincts. He gives you this extraordinary gift, and then what does he do? I swear, for his own amusement, his own private cosmic gag reel, he sets the rules in opposition. It's the goof of all time. Look but don't touch, touch but don't taste, taste, don't swallow. And while you're jumping from one foot to the next, what is he doing? He's laughing his sick fucking ass off. He's a tight ass, he's a sadist, he's an absentee landlord. Worship that? Never. Now, of course, he might be... Thank you. Oh, yes. Completely original to me. No, ignore the screen. And actually, I did love that in the movie.
The delivery is excellent in the movie. With those lines.
He really gives it, like, I didn't give it the oomph. He really gives it the angry oomph in that, like, he's mad. He's mad that he should be expected to worship this sort of God. And he could be lying, but boy, is it ever a good enough description to convince me Satan has a point, right? That the great war between heaven and hell makes a hell of a lot more sense with that little bit of context attached. Or maybe he's just lying because he's Satan, and he's a narcissist, and he's big mad that daddy loves humanity, and that's why he rebelled against heaven. But doesn't the first option make a whole lot more sense in the context of this rule of opposition? Maybe God is a liar. In any case, in the context of this trope, he is. There you go. But we can't talk evil gods without a nod to Silent Hill. Let's be fair. A game about a town harboring a cult that intends to bring its dark god into the world. Though depending on the lore and whether this thing is a capital G god or, I don't know, just like a very powerful monster is debatable. So is its intent if it's brought into being? I don't know. It's probably not like a hot little redhead in a red dress. Probably not.
Probably not.
Probably not. Would be nice. Probably not.
Judging by the fleeting glimpses we see of what it may or may not be in the games, like it has many forms. Let's be real at this point. None of them are particularly flattering, I wouldn't say.
And even if you hadn't seen these glimpses, just like the environment inspired by its presence or the sort of creatures that it uses as its servants. Like in Silent Hill 2, what was that creature's name that's always following Heather around?
In Silent Hill 3, you mean?
Oh, Silent Hill 3. I'm sorry. Yeah, 2 was James. Yeah, Silent Hill 3. There's a monster that's like supposed to be an avatar or a representative of the god in that. He's the one that drags her away during her death scenes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's complicated. Like there's lots of different interpretations of stuff in that particular game as well, you know. Like Silent Hill 3 is really all about like the symbolism of like the rebirth of God, right? Like it's all about God being reborn into the world, and very biblical in some ways, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
And the results of Heather aborting the fetus essentially, and then having Claudia swallow it.
That was
at the
so
end,
horrible.
it is definitely an interesting thing. Like the god version of Claudia in the pit at the end is
It's really
visually something. Yeah,
It's quite a deity. Yeah, I don't think anyone not a part of Silent Hill cult could easily argue the birth of this god would probably be 40,000 levels of bad. Have you got a favorite evil god, Minx? Have you got a favorite evil god, daddy or mommy? Or
I don't know, actually. That's a really good question. I can't, off the top of my head, I can't really think of any, you know what I mean?
Do you just
like,
worship Lady D like everybody else as a goddess?
I mean, it's all
What
right.
did you think of
It's
her?
all right.
What did you?
I think we
were you
talked.
not-
I'm sure it was, yeah, I was much more a fan of her daughters than I was her.
Oh, fair.
She
Yeah,
dresses a bit too vintage for me. You know what I mean? Like it's not.
I
Not
kind of liked
not
her
always a
daughters.
huge fan of her.
I kind of liked her daughters more myself because I like that whole crazy. I like a baby from House of a Thousand Corpses kind of personalities in sort of villainesses.
Oh, that. Sorry, that gave me such a horrific image. So briefly there. Yeah.
Sorry.
Sometimes it like you know like I kind of like a variety of different personalities, but in that definitely the sisters won home for me. I think in terms of like my favorite characters. It's a shame they were a little short-lived and ultimately pretty fucking useless. Let's be honest.
Yeah, it's a shame. It needed more screen time. That whole sequence in the castle, I really enjoyed it. I was sad to leave, but there you go. Okay, so next up we have a very special film series, and this is the Whispering Corridors. Correct. Tell us about
Yes.
tell us about them private Korean schools, Minx. What do they get on up to in there? What's going
So,
on in there?
oh god,
Ah,
the things they get up to.
hmm.
So, Whispering Corridors, or also known as Jaeger Godam, which is like I think that means like ghost school horror or like maybe like girls' high school ghost story or some shit like that. Is a lengthy series. There's actually 6 films in total in the series. Set in various Korean schools. And basically the stories usually feature a ghost story taking place in an all-girls private school, and with particular focus on various things such as they're pretty critical of like the authority it says that. Does it sound screen there? It does. Yeah, it says they're critical of like the authoritarianism of the South Korean education system and just the government as overall.
Right.
They have a feature on gay relationships, which vary in subtlety across the series. Like some films, it's fairly subtle. Other films, it's like really full on, but it's very much an expression of sexuality between 2 female characters, which particularly in South Korean media, and particularly at the time some of these films came out, is an incredibly forward thinking and progressive thing in terms of like would be expected in South Korean culture. And there is a large focus on suicide and the loss of life in extremely tragic circumstances that cause ghosts to like stick around, you know. None of these films are happy. They're all pretty fucking miserable, if I'm perfectly honest with you. Like nothing about them is very
There's no happy
nice.
ending.
No,
No.
not really. Like the first film is called Whispering Corridors, and it's definitely the most like toned down of all of them. You feel it's like them dipping their toes in like the stuff that's to come in the later installments. That is about a ghost that constantly wants to have a normal high school life because they died in horrific circumstances years and years and years ago.
Hmm.
Um, and the reason they die is they are in love with another student who is into art.
Ah.
Um, and she makes this beautiful sculpture. And this other girl creeps in to have a look at the sculpture after hours, and it falls on her and crushes her to death. And all these like scissors and knives that are around the sculpture fall and impale her as
Oh,
well while she's under it.
did nobody mention she was in a Final Destination movie or what?
Yeah, it's a really odd death, actually. I will say, she bleeds to death from the sculpting knives, ultimately.
Oh, that's great.
Um, but basically, this ghost it wanted a normal life, and it basically follows a bunch of students undercovering that this ghost is constantly interjecting herself into school years each year, and occasionally bumping off people that she doesn't like, and things like that. Essentially, it's nothing too horrific, and nothing too gay. But the second film in the series, which is Memento Mori, which is an incredibly controversial film in South Korea, at least at the time it was.
Hmm.
This is basically a full-on gay romance movie. Like the characters, I will say this: I've never seen 2 characters in any movie kiss like the characters do in this movie. It's like they're eating each other's faces. I have never seen anything quite as full on. Okay. And this is not too long after homosexuality was legalized in South Korea, and these 2 girls are just swallowing each other in
You
the
got
middle of a
Chad
classroom in
interested.
one scene. In one scene, like the entire class is just staring at them and like yelling abuse at them as they're just making
Is
out,
this your way of
essentially.
trying to put us off watching it? That's not yelling abuse while these two lick each other's faces, Chad. You're gonna go
Yeah,
find this
yeah.
scene after the stream?
Um, but basically, it's about how shit life is for gay people in
Mm.
Korea. It's a movie about suicide because of that. It's basically one of the girls kills herself, and she comes back for horrific revenge on anyone that alienated them or made them feel like shit, basically. And uh, there's only one girl that she like tries to protect, and it's not even her former lover, because her former lover gives her the cold shoulder when she realizes the social stigma.
Hmm.
um it's another girl discovers like her diary, and she sort of protects this girl while she uncovers the truth of how
Ah.
she ended up being pushed towards suicide and the people responsible, essentially. um
That's it. That sounds
It's
very emotional. I like that.
It is. It's a very sad film, very dark. Some pretty good deaths as well, and some good horror aspects to it. But I would say it's more like a gay romance drama than a horror movie, if that makes sense. It's just like it just has a supernatural streak to it.
Like an
Okay.
element to it that's kind of, yeah, I've seen a few movies like
Yeah.
that, and usually like Korean horror films are pretty good at with that sort of theme. I've enjoyed a few like that, and incidentally, all of them at like private schools and stuff like that. None of them from this
Yeah.
series, but yeah, it's like a theme that they like to revisit quite a bit for some reason.
Um, the third film, very briefly, we'll touch on is
Mhm.
Wishing Stairs, and I want to touch on this one because it's my favorite of them all. It's
Mm.
set in a ballet school. Well, it's an all girls art school, but like ballet is like a a specialty subject there and that kind of
Right.
thing. And like it's based around an urban legend that if you climb the steps of the school's dormitory um, at nighttime, a magical 29th step will appear, and a fox spirit will grant you your deepest personal wish, essentially. And because this is a ballet school and the girls are all competing with each other for like positions, one girl who is competing with another girl decides to do this in order to so she gets the main position, essentially.
So she
You know,
wishes to get the main
she wishes to
position,
get the
or
main position in yeah, specifically that, but it results in the other girl being thrown down the stairs by her afterwards
so she
and
doesn't
ending up in a
actively
coma.
wish for the girl to be hurt. She's not like, I
No,
hope that bitch breaks her knees.
no, but
That's no.
every wish in it ends up going awry, sort of like a monkey's paw
Nice.
situation a bit, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
um and again, like there's like gay undertones between various characters in it as well.
Hmm.
It's the films are very heavily focused on like the bullying aspect and things like that as well. Like there'll be two girls who are close, other students are mean to them. One of those girls dies, and then the ghost kills a bunch of the people that are mean to them. That's like a recurring theme throughout. You know what I mean?
Right, yeah. The kind of like
But it
ghostly protector sort of thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, and that goes even further in the fourth film. The fourth film, the main character dies in the first minute of the film, and she possesses her friend, who is probably her lover as well. Like it's like heavily implied, but she
Wink,
lives
wink.
inside the other character's head for the duration of the film while they try and figure out who killed her. Basically, is the
Right.
plot of the fourth one. Sorry,
Oh, that sounds really good. There's
I
like
haven't
a
seen all of them, but yeah.
there's like a new one, either that's come out like last year or is coming out.
Yeah, the newest one is called The Humming. It came out last year. I have not seen it. I've not seen Blood Pledge either from 2009,
Mm-hmm.
but they all have very similar plots and tones and things like that,
Yeah.
and they're all very well known in South Korea for being like pretty edgy, you know what I mean, and controversial for
Yeah.
what they are within within the media. That said, like the films tend to do well. Like I was doing some research into like how well received they were in terms of like like cinema and stuff, and in terms of like domestic cinema, they're often in the top like 5 films made in South Korea released that year, that kind of thing when they come out.
Mm-hmm.
They seem to do well. Um, but I don't know how many people like agree with the message or whatever. And I heard that with Memento Mori in particular, there were like protests against the director and stuff for the shocking portrayal of same-sex relationships, which had never been seen before, like in South Korean media, to like the degree that they are portrayed in that movie.
I'd like to
You know,
complain about the face licking. I don't care what gender they are. I don't.
it's very full on. It's very full on.
Wow. Yeah. Well, honestly, since you're a fan of these themes, and I see a few people in the chat are as well. Did you ever see the live action Fatal Frame movie?
I did actually.
Did you?
I have seen it.
Oh,
Yeah.
I was going to recommend that one because it shares, I think, a lot of these similar themes, including, I think, the sort of gay girl aspect to it, because like the two main characters, the one that is being haunted was in love. Low key, they sort of make out that this was the
Mhm.
case, and the fact that she's being haunted by the other girl is because she enacted a ritual to summon her so that they could be together and stuff. If you haven't
Yeah.
seen that, yeah, check it out.
Have you seen the Dread Out movie, by the way?
No, I didn't realize there was one.
There is. I'm trying to track it down because I really want to watch it.
I
Because
want to watch it.
considering how bizarrely jank Dreadout is, and I kind of like how bizarrely jank it is, especially the
I
second
really
one.
like the. Oh,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
actually played the second. Holy shit!
I beat the second finally this
Mm.
year. After I rage quit on the final boss the first time I played it, and then I beat it this year, and they both drove me insane. But it was a lot easier the second time around because they tweaked a lot of it after
Did
release.
you ever? There was like a little I'm thinking of, I think it Dreadout. They had kind of an add-on expansion type release.
Yeah, Keepers of the Dark. It was like a boss
you-
rush type
Did you like
thing.
that
I
one?
like that. Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, I did that one. Did you ever see the live action Corpse Party 1 and 2?
I have not. I didn't know there was live action corpse parties.
They're,
Oh
the
my
first
god.
one is hilariously like shit, just hilariously shit, and the second one is actually pretty decent. Pretty decent step up.
Does it have dead body panty shots? Is the most important question.
Well, I'm positive. It's like the second one especially is very loyal to a lot of the stuff that went on in the games and the theme. I think we spent some time looking for a toilet. So
Yeah,
that was a
crucial.
very heavy theme.
That's an overarching key theme, is
Yeah.
needing somewhere to pee.
It was very
and then
important.
just not doing it in the corner of the dilapidated building that's covered in blood and piss and shit anyway.
It's actually part of the heavenly host ritual. Nobody actually realizes that.
You needing to go to the toilet.
Yeah. If you don't get her there in time, then you die. Yeah.
Oh.
But yeah,
she just explode.
She just, yes, with piss. With a horrible possessed piss. I'm going to stop now. But watch the live action Corpse Party movies. Yeah, big recommend on those. Actually, I'm going to do a feature on some of the, like, I like some of the crazier Japanese and sort of like Asian horror movies. You ever see like the Versus films? You know, they've got like a Grudge versus Ring movie called Sadako versus Kai. You seen that?
Yeah, I've seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have
you played the Ring game, by the way, on Dreamcast?
Oh my god, I played on the Wii. I think it was
Grudge. Yeah.
The Grudge. Yeah, and that was infuriating.
Get a special Dreamcast and play the Ring. It's an experience.
Is it, like, by experience? Is it like a positive experience?
The music is something.
I feel like you're not being straight with me right now.
No, just I can't. I don't want to spoil the experience of
Yeah.
playing the Ring. It's called The Ring: Terror's Realm, and it was exclusively on Dreamcast. It plays like Silent Hill and Resident
I
Evil.
wonder if there's like a ROM or some.
Oh, yeah, there definitely is. I mean,
not that I would ever. Not that.
Not
No,
that I would advocate.
no, we don't
or
do that
use the
here.
ROM for my entire playthrough.
No,
but,
no, you didn't.
I may be
no.
able to send you one, maybe.
Yeah,
know,
no,
if I was
someone
bad.
else, not me. You're sending that to
Yeah,
someone else,
sending
and
it to
it's not
someone
even
else,
you
yeah.
sending it. Somebody is sending something to somebody, but we don't know what it is. Anyway.
Exactly. Yes.
Anyway, all right, let's tackle.
What's a ROM?
I don't know. What's a ROM?
Rome. I think
Rome?
It's
That's a place.
Yeah. Oh shit.
God, don't you know anything?
Go. Moving on.
Moving on. Let's tackle some common ground with you today. Let's tackle some common ground with you this fine day. I was trying to find a good title for the subject here. It's just subject. Back to the old Harlan Ellison. I know I'm revisiting, but it's relevant, I swear. I'm going to give you a good title for this today, and it's catchy, and it's to the point. And you tell me if this gives you a basic idea, all right? I call it Harlan Ellison and how being an ordinary, angry little bitch all the time kind of made him a good writer, really.
It's excellent.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel
I think that should be the name of every segment going forward.
Yes. We just talk about Harlan Ellison all the time. He's dead now. He died a few years ago. Now, I think he was like 88 years old or something in his late 80s. His rage finally killed him.
Was he upset about it? Or?
Yes. He is on his deathbed, just really angry. Yeah, you know what? If you like ask me to sum up the personality of a man like Harlan Ellison in a quote, he wrote the greatest Star Trek episode ever made, The City on the Edge of Forever. And thanks, he hated it. Ellison was a really ordinary guy. We did talk about him during the last tropes episode and about what was probably his most popular trope, the one that affected modern popular culture today, and I must scream. And when one of the mechanics of using metaphorical language is named after a short story, you write, well, I think that like you've seen some success. Personally, it's hard for me to imagine any other writer sitting down to write Ellison. And I think his nature was a big part of that. There was a man that, hey, he made his 5th marriage work, fifth time's the charm, remember? I don't know, 5 marriages, wow. And yeah, look, I'm no stranger either to being a fan of writing of questionable sources. Lovecraft, like I said, is my... There you go. There it is again. Any excuse.
That's
There.
such an impressive chin, such a manly jaw.
So solid. Yeah, that's a reliable chin on a man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but there was a lot to unpack about him. There were problems. A lot of his problems, though, bled heavily into his work, and in the same way, a lot of Ellison's bled into his. And I don't believe that Lovecraft, for example, could have written of the strange and alien as effectively as he did had he not felt so deeply out of place and alone and alienated himself. His xenophobia and his racism played heavily into that. It's by don't get me wrong, it's not a justification or an excuse, but these perspectives, they did layer the work of these men in a way. And I think it would have been absent if not for their deeply ingrained faults and weaknesses. As human beings, we don't really like to air what we think are our weaknesses, but I do believe that creative expression can't help but manifest them in some way or another, and sometimes ironically in a way that gives creativity depth. And that's how you get episodes of Star Trek like The City on the Edge of Forever. This is a 1967 fan favorite with some of the best emotional depth of the entire series. And there's also The Terminator, which, depending on who you ask, may or may not have been a ripoff of an episode of The Twilight Zone called Soldier, written by Harlan Ellison. Stories like I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, where hatred, the holding of grudges, overkill, anger, pettiness were central themes. And meanwhile, Ellison was an angry guy that held grudges, would get overkill angry for the pettiest shit, was known to have committed an assault or two, and even a wild groping at one point at the Hugos. It's like a lit light version of the Will Smith slap. It'd be like if Will Smith had walked onto the stage and just squeezed Chris Rock's balls, just juice them like lemons.
If he'd done that, that'd have been more entertaining, actually.
Do you think
he
would have
not
been?
That I'd advocate for sexual assault, obviously, but you know what I mean.
Do you think he would have been in more or less trouble?
I don't know. I mean, he's been
Isn't
banned
that
for like
something?
5 years now, right? So like,
yeah. And don't worry, by the way, that is not a photograph here of Ellison groping Connie Willis. That is just a photograph of him deep-throating her microphone. Incidentally, I also recommend the writing of the poor woman he groped. That is Connie Willis. Her novel Doomsday Book is fucking great. It's about a woman who time travels and gets her ass stuck in the Black Plague. Big recommend to everybody and to you, Minx. It's a really good book. Now, if you asked me, well, does that mean you think people should like get a pass on shitty behavior for the sake of enhancing their work? My answer is no, unequivocally no. Ideally, Ellison should have sat his ass in therapy so like his first 4 wives wouldn't need to.
We talked about how many times you've been married last week, didn't we?
Fucking 5 times.
Time, anyway.
Like, when do you give up the goat, man? And how do you, like, why do you keep doing it? I don't know. He's, yeah. So, I mean, finding the tools you need to, like, behave less deranged in public doesn't rob you of your ability to channel your prior experiences. If that was true, then we would never grow as people. We'd never have the ability to self-reflect, and dipping into those old thoughts and feelings is necessary to do that. I guess ultimately, when I think of the value of books or movies or whatever, I think the fact that they might have come from a troubled source doesn't mean that there's nothing of value to take away. You're at the very least getting the unconscious of the person. These feelings, there's like feelings pushed down that leaked onto the page or into a film that might speak to something like deep inside you too, that might help you understand something that you need help with, or present a new perspective.
Sure.
Yeah, obviously the same consideration doesn't apply to out and out hate propaganda though. If somebody shat something like that on a page, that is a different case entirely. I'm not going to get into that, but that's something else. And thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I'd like to go out on an inspiring note, actually. some wise words by this calm and collected sage fellow human. Thank God he didn't have a Twitter account. Star Wars is
Oh my God.
adolescent nonsense. Close Encounters is obscurantist drivel. Star Trek can turn your brains to puree of bat guano, and the greatest science fiction series of all time is Doctor Who, the humanist defender of good and truth whose exploits put to shame those of Kimble Kinnison, Captain Future, and the panty waist nerds like Han Solo and Luke Skywalker. My hero, Doctor Who. For the record, I disagree with him completely, and the punchline, I think, is that I bet any monies he would hate modern iteration of Doctor Who, and I don't just mean Lady Who seasons. I
Yeah.
think he'd legit hate what the show is now. So there you go. Next, we have some lore coming your way. We've got a game here that inspired a vast underwater horror land. We're going to talk about it. And this game's villainous, I think, is a proud card-carrying member of the corrupted AI super team, right up there with AMC or
Oh,
Skynet.
I was going to test you and ask what it stood for, but you already have it on
Ah,
screen. That's my first thing.
I
So
was
yeah,
ready. Go ahead.
here we have the antagonist of System Shock 1 and 2, the progenitor to Bioshock, Shodan, sentient, hyper-optimized data access network. She is a fictional artificial intelligence and a bit of a bitch, really, especially as like AIs go. Ultimately, essentially, Shodan is a hyper advanced AI who is designed by humanity to perform various tasks for them. You know what I mean? She, however, very, very early on, she has her moral compass completely removed, which I'm not entirely sure why that happens. I can't entirely remember if it's been a while since I played the games, but she's hacked, I believe.
Yeah, they
And the
apply.
hacking is what goes wrong, right? Like the hacking removes the sort of locks on her personality.
Yeah, they apply. I have here, it's called the elimin.host, which is, yeah, a code that basically fucks her up. Yep.
Because she's hacked because they're trying to like get sort of like military secrets from her, and it all deteriorates rather rapidly. She basically becomes the ruler of the Citadel Station in System Shock 1, where she is based. But basically becoming an omnipresent deity, essentially here. She can watch through security cameras, so she sees what's going on all the time. She can look directly out of like TV screens and computer screens. And in fact, when you're playing the game, where you actually play the hacker, you know, who is wandering around the station, she will constantly appear in like the TV screens and the cameras and stuff, and basically hurl abuse at you, essentially. While she is like a god essentially in this as well, she can't directly harm the protagonist. She's basically controls those creatures that are left on board the station in order to attack the protagonist, which is something we see in both System Shock games. But these creatures are like the robotic security and that kind of thing. But she also takes over organic creatures as well, making them like cyborgs, forcing like enhancements into their bodies in order for her to control them, making them partially electronic. And she likes to just basically scream megalomaniacal abuse at the main character as she tries to create her perfect utopia on board this station, which is resolved in everyone that does not obey her being massacred or being assimilated into her army of cyborgs. Yeah.
Yeah, not the cybernetic upgrade you'd want to sign up for in this case. Not the way to cyberpunk utopia you're hoping for.
Yes.
With Shodan.
But
she is hot
like
though, yes, chat.
She is pretty high. Like of all the like AIs out there, I'd probably like she's probably what I'd like to fuck the most. Now I think about it.
Most fuckable AI. Well, she's kind of a
yeah.
deity within the confines of her own ship. So, ooh.
The one from Mass Effect as well is pretty hot. I can't remember her name. But yeah.
Yeah, I know.
She gets a body in the third game. I can't remember her name though. In System Shock 2, well, actually, so in System Shock 1, it ends by Shodan's like core being ejected out into space from the Citadel Station. And we are just like, well, that's all that dealt with, lol. But obviously, that isn't the case because Shodan survives. The pod crashes on a planet. I think it's called Tau Ceti 5. And she basically is stuck on this planet for like decades afterwards. Okay. Years later, a exploratory vessel called the Von Braun discovers the pod that has Shodan in it, and she is reactivated on board the ship, immediately going back to what she was doing before, making her own creations, taking over the entire ship. And our protagonist of System Shock 2, who is in cryosleep aboard the Von Braun, awakes basically to complete fucking chaos as Shodan has unleashed all sorts of horrific monstrosities on board the ship and killed most of the crew. And your objective is to stop her. Big spoilers here, but I'm gonna just like you know, but it's just tough shit, guys. All right.
That's what we do here.
It's what we do. It's what we do. So throughout the System Shock 2, you were guided by someone called Dr. Polito. She claims to be one of the only surviving crew members on board the ship, and she contacts you via via radio and stuff, and she guides you to where she is based aboard the ship. However, once you arrive at the location on the ship where she has been guiding you to, there is a scene where you find her body, and the wall behind her changes into Shodan's beautiful, very sexy face. I'm gonna do this. This is iconic line as far as I'm concerned. I can't do the voice, but
Go for it.
she says, "The Polito form is dead, insect. Are you afraid? What is it you fear? The end of your trivial existence? When the history of my glory is written, your species shall only be a footnote to my magnificence. I am Shodan." And basically, I guess that sort of reinforced like the twist aspect of the Shock games. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
to a certain degree. I'm sure when they were making Bioshock, they were like, we got to have a twist like that one. But anyway, you've been guided by Shodan the entire time in System Shock 2, and you play right into her like egomaniacal plans essentially
Being
to create
controlled the
her
whole time.
utopia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Damn.
System Shock 3 is still in development. I don't even know if it got cancelled or not. It's just been a train
I
wreck
was gonna
of
say, is that ever
things.
coming out?
Well, System Shock 1 Remake is finally coming out because I got an email from the Kickstarter after 5 years recently saying it's out next month.
Well.
But I have no idea what happened to System Shock 3. In my opinion, this is just going off a bit, but the remake of Prey, the 2017 Arcane Studios Prey, not the 3D Realms version, is a far better spiritual successor to System Shock than any other game out there, and than any of the Bioshocks. Prey is basically System Shock 2 with really, really nice graphics and adjustable difficulty level, and it's absolutely fucking excellent if you haven't played it. It's very similar in terms of its story and gameplay, but a lot of people overlooked Prey, I feel, the remake, and it's absolutely excellent.
I have played it. Yeah, I felt it didn't really get very much promotion. At least not comparably to like some other games. People didn't talk about it very much considering how clever it was. I thought it was anyway. I don't know.
The side character caller out is showed in like an hour, and there's like implications and stuff, but like for the most part, I think it's like seen as a shocking reveal, one of like the early shocking reveals in video games. You know what I mean? But yeah, I'm very excited if they do come out with some more System Shock games because I always enjoyed them a lot. I mean, I like Bioshock 2, don't get me wrong, but I feel that in terms of horror, System Shock did it a lot better, and I think it's probably one of the best sci-fi horrors out there. And I definitely think she's inspired a lot of like other villains and things like that. Like GLaDOS is basically Shodan.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
definitely. Like a funnier Shodan.
Yeah, and Shodan in some ways is a slightly less sadistic Hal. You know what I mean? From
yes, and a
from
less
the map.
sadistic Am as well. I mean, they
Yeah.
basically, although I don't think, I mean, she's not really contained by her programming or anything to the extent that like a character like Am is.
No. She is completely sort of unleashed, and to be fair, her biggest flaw as a enemy is the fact that she is slightly more human because of having the programming constraints, removed. It makes her very egotistical and full of herself and overly confident, which is, a very human flaw in a lot of ways that you wouldn't expect a AI to necessarily have. But after the hack from the first game, I do remember now. I think someone in chat said it too, for real though. But in That you were the one that hacks her for some dodgy corporation in the first game, and then it all goes to shit because of your
Oh,
actions, but you
right,
don't
yeah.
realize how bad it is.
I've never
There you
actually
go.
played the one or well, I played them a little bit, but like I didn't really get all the way through. It just wasn't. I don't know. It just wasn't a good game for me in the sense that the mechanics were like a bit much for me. But I'm kind of looking forward to the remake. I'm gonna give that a shot.
Yes.
So I'll have like a fresh experience, not really having the first to look back on. So I'm pretty
Yeah.
excited about that.
So anyway, yeah, she's one of the, in my opinion, one of the greatest all-time villains in video games. She's just excellent,
Cool.
and she's pretty hot for a computer. So go,
Yeah.
yeah.
She is very. All right, so there we go. All right, so we've got our favorite games, we've got our favorite developers and their project. I like to keep an eye out on a few of the more interesting ones. Namely, if you like dipping your toes, your feet, your legs, just if you like to wade ass up right into the uncanny, and you like the otherworldly, you like unsettlingly cosmic places that beat underlying dread into your earballs, hazy threats into your eyeballs. See Kitty Horrorshow. Kitty had a bit of an on again, off again relationship with development to begin with. She had an interest but didn't really find inspiration until playing a game called Arcadia, a pastoral tale, which actually wasn't horror. It was a text based game that had you explore an ancient landscape, and it was developed with Twine. And a game like Arcadia, though, really explains itself in terms of what she might have found inspiring about it, considering the deeply exploratory nature of Kitty's own games. And that's a big, big part of what I enjoy about her work. Kitty's games are a step into an unknown that has been established for a long time before you and will probably remain a long time after you. It scratches an itch of mine that is tired of, I guess, the main character syndrome. Like you're not heroically trying to save the city, or you're not taking an active part in your own defense. I'm kind of tired of always like being the main character. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I like on the last show I even showcased Knife Point Horror, the story podcast, and what drew me to that was that like you were always sort of a third party observer to the horrors after the fact, or even a long time after, and that's something that I feel is really represented very well in Kitty Horrorshow's games. You're wandering these like slate gray cities where someone's left bottled blood in boxes on street corners. Why? I don't know. But you'll tie yourself into knots thinking of interesting scenarios while you explore. The games are inspiring in a weird way. Nothing to get you through like a creative block, I think, than visiting like a strange little world. Very Silent Hillian kind of feel to it too, a lot of
Her,
these.
her work reminds me a lot of like things like LSD Dream Simulator, where like
Yeah.
there is like a series of disjointed environments potentially that feel very ethereal and thought-provoking without you really knowing 100% why.
I can't get that working on my fucking rig right now. I'd love to stream like the old LSD stuff and some of the crazier classic stuff, but I can't get it working. But I know what you mean. Yeah. All of them are like really surreal. You're moving through like a city, or these silent deserts with only monoliths in the distance, or you're walking the road of a midwestern town to find out its underground secrets. And a big part of what plays into the uncanny nature of her work is as creepy and immersive as these places may be, they're always unmistakably artificial. That is, the visual style of all her games is very minimalist. It's a very or early 90s rougher approach to graphics that actually lend itself to that uncanny nature very well. Never a more complicated environment graphically than say original Silent Hill at the very least, and even original Doom at most with some of these games. It never gets more graphically complicated than that. And actually, I think I mentioned before we were talking about White Day
Yes.
once, and I really like the original for me was so much more scarier because even though it was like janky as fuck, the new one was just like too shiny and
Yeah,
pretty and like it was.
there definitely is something to say about minimalistic environments and things like that. I think they can work well from a horror perspective.
Yeah, especially if you sort of just have enough, because like these aren't just completely empty places. There is just enough, if you explore, to sort of start weaving together a story in your head if you feel like it, and that's what I really like. And now Kitty started publishing her games in 2014 with a game called Kirza, which drops you into the aforementioned monolith desert. And it's a good taste, good first taste for what you can expect. This was followed 2 years later with Anatomy, which was a spooky, empty house that needed exploring, and then degraded around you the more you continued to
It's like the
explore.
house is a body almost, right?
Yeah, yeah. Like you were finding these notes which lent these kind of revelations to you, and it affected the house. The way that it affected you psychologically, it took a turn on the house as well, which was a very interesting, I thought, concept. Um, there were also standalone entries that were, I think, funded by collections for patrons that Kitty put together. Haunted Cities, I think these collections are called. I think they're comprised of like 3 volumes, and each includes several games.
Yes.
And as quoted, they centered around the theme of virtual spaces and the potential for the disturbing nature of architecture and topography. And all of our collections include some variations on these themes. So yeah, if you feel like wandering a ghostly landscape and you've been to Silent Hill a few too many times, check out the Worlds of Kitty Horrorshow. There you go. You like you play a lot of Kitty's
I
games,
mean,
or
I
anything?
played most of these, I think, at some
Yeah,
point. Yeah,
yeah.
and most of them I quite liked. So yeah, they're definitely interesting experiences.
Yeah, and kind of the surreal aspect of it is really appealing to me. So there you go. All right, next up we have a brand new segment for the show. If you guys enjoy a little bit of a grim dark reality, welcome to the
We're going
true
into
crime.
true crime.
Yes, the true crime segment, true horrors. Real life inspires art a little too often sometimes. Though, disclaimer: we won't be showcasing any like sadistic shit or images, videos, anything like that. Twitch probably wouldn't like that very much.
Yes.
Probably wouldn't like that very much. Anyway, Minx, it's your show now. What you got for us? There you go.
Okay,
Tell us
so
all
today
about it.
we are going to talk about the case of Anneliese Michel, who was a German woman, or I guess girl, who was the focus of a very unusual case in Bavaria, West Germany, and had a very tragic end as a result of this. Now, let me, I guess, set the basic scene here. Okay, I will. The text is on screen there as well. But she was born as Anna Elizabeth Michel on the 21st of September 1952 in Bavaria, West Germany, to a Roman Catholic family. She had 3 sisters, and her parents were Josef and Anna. They were a very religious family. She went to mass regularly. However, once she turned 16, a lot of problems started happening. She started having convulsions, and she was diagnosed with temporal lobe epilepsy when she turned 16. And as a result of that, her parents gradually started seeing her deteriorate through the following years. Okay, so the temporal lobe epilepsy kept getting worse. She kept getting more and more seizures. Seizures. She was prescribed anticonvulsion drugs, and basically didn't really seem to do anything to fix the problem. And as her mental health deteriorated, she started describing seeing unusual things. Okay, so she would say things like she was seeing faces in the wall. She was hallucinating these like think creatures watching her. She complained about voices, especially all the focus of these things would be religious type things. The voices would tell her she was going to go to hell and burn for all eternity and this kind of stuff. And she vocalized this. She was like, this is what's happening to me, and no amount of psychiatric care and medical intervention, whether that was antipsychotic drugs and medicine for schizophrenia, things like that. Nothing seemed to put a stop to these disturbing visions and things that she was having. Okay, and everything took a real turn for the worse when a family friend of the family took Anneliese on a pilgrimage. They were all very religious, like the immediate circles are religious. And the friend of the family, sorry, noticed that Anneliese was unable to walk past a crucifix and would not drink water from a holy spring at the place they went to.
Uh-oh.
I think it's San Damiano, I think is the place she went to, but don't quote me on that. And basically, he was like, wow, this girl must be possessed. She must be possessed. She can't go into the shrine. She's like hesitant around this. And then when he asked her about it, she was like, "The soil's burning my feet like fire around the shrine. I can't go in." You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
she was reinforcing pretty much everything that he was worried about. Like, oh my god, this girl must be absolutely, completely fucking possessed by demons. You know,
Yeah.
and as a result, her family are like, well, there's only one thing we can do. We're gonna exorcise her. Okay. Um, now, key note here: this was all actually happening around the time that the movie The Exorcist had come out, and it was one of the highest-grossing movies of all time at the time. In fact, I think it was the highest-grossing horror movie of all time at the time it came out,
Hmm.
and it was like really like everywhere in the media. Like even if you hadn't seen the film, you would have heard about it. Like audience members like passing out because of how scary it was.
What a
You know,
controversy.
yeah, the controversy surrounding it, that kind of thing. People thinking it was real and all this crazy shit. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Um, and it's just a little note that that was what was going on in the world at the time. You know, this was around the time the movie came out,
Hmm.
and they tried to get permission from the Catholic Church to perform an exorcism, um, but the Catholic Church was a little wary of this to begin with. And they tried to get their permission, and they were like, "No, no, no, she's we have no evidence that she's possessed. Essentially, she's probably just mentally ill. You should go to doctors." So the sensible thing, they said the sensible thing, you should get some medical help.
Yeah.
Um, she got worse though after this, and started like getting more aggressive. She started hurting herself. She drank her own piss apparently and ate insects, um, which probably not normal behavior at this point in time. But she was treated with even more different anti-seizure drugs and antipsychotic drugs. Like new ones were being discovered all the time at this point. And they never seemed to work. Nothing seemed to put an end to these symptoms. Okay. And eventually she began growling, seeing demons, and throwing things around the room. Very much like the girl in The Exorcist, actually. I just want to point that out as well, because
Hmm.
that's very important for later on. All right. So in the end, eventually, they found a priest who was willing to conduct an exorcism. Okay. He was granted permission by the bishop to do this, so like it was all like going ahead. The priest, I think his name was Ernst Alt. I'm not sure I'm saying that right, but he was given a permission by his bishop to start performing exorcisms on Anneliese.
Hmm.
And these were recorded. I don't think we're going to play any of them, but
No.
there is audio of some of these exorcisms online if you want to, that were presented in court later on.
And it's as
If you
awful as you want
it's
to imagine.
it's not nice, but they are freely available online. Um, Basically, she was like tied up. Just imagine all the cliche things you've seen about exorcisms. It's that. Like they
Yeah.
did all that kind of stuff. So they tied her to a bed. They were shouting at her, and she was shouting
Beating
back.
her and shit. And yeah.
Yeah, and she wasn't eating. She wasn't drinking. She was just like essentially just being constantly abused, etc. She claimed, this is another thing I find very interesting as well, and again is important for later on. She claimed to be possessed by 6 demons. The movie The Exorcism of Emily Rose is based on this case, and they take some liberties with which demons they were. But like she proclaims, I think in there's various claims about what demons are meant to be, but she said Hitler, Nero, I believe. This another a Catholic priest that had been in trouble for molestation in Germany around the time that it
Hmm.
was now dead. And Cain from the Bible, Judas, and basically and Satan, I think, was the 6th demon. I don't know. I guess they're all different demons. But
Yeah.
anyway, these were all demons that she would have been very familiar with from her studies, especially bringing up Hitler and the more localized, like Catholic priest scandal, as it were.
Yeah.
um I think
Not
is a
some
very
obscure
interesting thing.
demon. It's
Yeah,
like, yeah.
it's a very obscure thing for her to bring up, but it wouldn't have been obscure to her because of the communities that she lived in.
Yeah.
Like if someone said to me like, "What demons are you possessed by?" I'd be like, "Belial" or some shit.
Oh, that's
Like,
what I meant. That like she
yeah,
didn't. It's not that she chose like an obscure demon from like biblical stories. I don't even know which one. Like she's choosing ones in popular culture at the time. Everybody, like you said, like the Exorcist movie would have been out. So
yeah.
whatever.
It's worth noting, like a lot of the symptoms of her possession seem to be based on not on reality of previous exorcisms, but what people thought an exorcism should be, or so a possession should be. Sorry, not an
Right.
exorcism. Um. Anyway,
I
this
ha-
went on for. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say real quick. I had kind of a hot take on the mother's role in all this, and that I wasn't entirely unconvinced because I'd looked into this too when like Emily Rose came out and stuff. I looked into the case,
Yeah, yeah,
and I'd read how she basically enabled the possession part of it quite a bit by like
yeah.
claiming to the priests that she herself had witnessed her daughter's eyes turning black and her hands turning into claws and paws and
Like
shit like that.
absolutely crazy shit.
Yeah,
That
and I hot take is that mom was trying to hurt her too, intentionally.
yeah. Um, Essentially, though, this went on for 10 months. 10 months of exorcisms, by the way. 67 exorcisms over 10 months.
Oof.
Okay. Some of these sessions would last up to, would last 4 hours straight, by the way. So, like, this is not like a quick thing. And by eventually, on the 1st of July 1976, she died. The cause of death was malnutrition. She was only 30 kilograms, which is 66 pounds, at the
Yikes.
time she died. She had broken limbs, and she'd been unable to move without assistance, basically from the constant abuse at this point. I think she also had pneumonia. Um, she was in an absolute wreck,
You
essentially.
can find
Uh,
photos of the after
yeah,
pics or like when she was heavy in it. I didn't want to feature it here
yeah,
because
yeah,
they
yeah,
are awful. But yeah,
yeah,
she also looked like she's getting like punched in the face. Her eyes had black eyes and shit. Like I don't know if that's
yeah.
maybe from the starvation because that can actually be something that happens sometimes. But considering all the beating and shit, wouldn't surprise me if she was getting wailed on in the face.
Yeah. So essentially, what happened up to that was they tried to get it passed off as a natural death, like the family, like really quickly. They called in like someone they knew who previously treated her, and were like, "Look, this is completely natural." And the coroner was like, "Fuck no, this is like the
Yeah,
opposite of natural."
yeah, she died
And
in her sleep gently. Yeah, all right, fuck off.
yeah, yeah. And a trial took place essentially to determine who was responsible for her death. The priests were put on trial who carried out the exorcisms. And the church, while initially they were like, "Oh yeah, we'll fund it," they sort of like gradually, as the facts of the case concurred, they were like, "Nothing to do with us. We had
Wah,
nothing
wah.
to do with this," and they basically left them to fend for themselves.
We've never seen these priests before.
Yeah.
Lock the gates. Yeah. Yeah.
There was like they played the exorcism tapes. It sounds like scenes from the actual Exorcist movie. Like she does like the voice, like in the Exorcist movie.
She's really
There's
fucking
like
up her
background.
vocal cords. God
Yeah,
damn.
it's pretty fucking crazy. And ultimately, the sort of like the key issue, the key thing that here that sort of like fucked the priests essentially in this instance was they got in a lot of medical experts and people who'd seen her over the years, you know, with her epilepsy and her basically schizophrenic behavior at that point, to you know discuss what they thought was going on. And essentially, the general diagnosis across the board from these experts was the fact that she'd initially had epilepsy, and because the treatment wasn't working, it made her distrust medical people. You know what I mean? Made her
Yeah. Yeah.
distrust medical care. She thought she couldn't get help and things like that for all these horrible seizures she was having.
Yeah.
And as a result, she was like, well, maybe it's something religious, because religion was all she knew. She was incredibly introvert, very focused on just spending time with her family, and they were all super, super religious. And as these delusions built, she presumably had some pre-existing mental illness like schizophrenia. I don't know if it was exactly
Yeah.
schizophrenia, but you know what I mean. And these delusions coupled with that in order to create basically a complete fiction of possession. It is something that can happen. There's been other cases of this happening where someone's delusions become so believable that they start manifesting physically. And they had some examples of this in court. Very rare, but definitely something that
Yeah.
that is a real thing. And the jury ultimately sided with the experts and were like, this is a result of the parents' negligence. This is a result of the priest's negligence. They were the ones that added fuel and fire to her delusions by
Yeah.
allowing her to believe these things in the first place. and accepting stuff that clearly didn't happen as fact, or believing like there was times when she was mumbling and the priests were like, this is demons arguing, and it was just her mumbling and shit like that,
Just
and
playing into it. And just like the mother, I think they were just enabling,
yes,
just fucking role playing at this poor girl's expense is what they were
yeah.
doing. And fuck the movie, by the way. Let's talk about the movie, I guess, a little bit. I just want to say
Mhm.
fuck it for low-key implying at the end that the priests were in the right.
Yeah,
I don't
I
like
don't
that.
like that movie very much, to
Not
be honest
me
with you.
neither. Isn't that the girl from Dexter?
I can't
Oops,
remember.
I can't
Oh,
remember
it
either
is.
who the
Yeah,
actress.
like his
I think it
sister, you
is.
mean?
The sister, yeah, Deb or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, yeah, it is. Yeah, it
Yeah.
is.
I'm not like a huge fan of demonic possession or demon possession horror, but I've seen a ton of it. Yeah, this was not one of my
I
go-to.
like The Last Exorcism a lot more as
Oh
a
yeah.
as an exorcism movie. I think that's pretty. I like found footage though, so that's probably why I like
There
that.
was a really
Um,
good one that I enjoyed. I forget the name of it, but it featured a woman who was losing her memory because of Alzheimer's, and like how
mhm.
she was also at the same time being possessed, so that they're trying to actually like find the fine line between what was possession and what was her mental illness. And it was pretty well executed, pretty scary. I can't remember what it was. Fuck. Somebody will know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, but anyway, I guess the icing on the shit cake is no one actually went to jail for this. Nobody. They
Bullshit.
all got, including the family and the priest, got suspended prison sentences. And they, just had to do like probation and things like that.
Yeah, in the movie it was time served too. Yeah, I think.
So they had to pay as well for the cost of proceedings, but ultimately nothing really came of this. Like the only sort of knock on effect from this was the church ordered less exorcisms because they were more scared about wasting money and shit like that.
Yeah.
Not, I doubt it was for some moral reason. It was just for money.
I
You know what I
don't
mean?
think they care. Yeah. Yeah, The Taking of Deborah Logan. Thank you. Chad always knows. That's the one I was thinking of. Yeah, this was a very sad
Yeah,
story.
and
Yeah.
it's basically just a case of mental illness being encouraged and stimulated, so the delusions become reality, and that's just a really tragic case overall.
I know there's several cases of death by the negligence or abuse of some of these sort of things. Would you say that this is probably the most famous one?
Yeah, just mainly because of the timing, I feel. You know what I mean? Because The Exorcist was so prevalent at the time, it made like international news. This did and
Yeah.
things like that. It was like the real life Exorcist case. You know what I mean? And because I mean, I don't know if she ever saw the movie, but she clearly had heard things about it and things like that, in my
Yeah.
opinion, and that only fueled the delusions further. She is behaving so much like the girl in the movie. It's it's impossible not to, you know,
She would have had
uh
a wellspring to draw from between, like, yeah, what was popular then in the movies and her family and upbringing. Yeah, she
yeah.
absolutely would have had a wellspring of this sort of shit. It's so sad,
Yeah,
you
it's
know.
just a really tragic case.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'd like to do some more like true crime stuff in the
Oh
future,
yeah,
guys.
yeah.
But I'd like to do it where like things tie in more with horror as well at the same time. You know what I mean? There's obviously like, I don't obviously think there's a supernatural aspect to
No.
this, but some crazy people did,
Yeah.
and unfortunately, this poor girl was a victim of that.
Well, maybe we could examine more of like the stuff that's like inspired by whatever sort of true crime shit too. And
Hmm.
I swear to God, I'm gonna put in that Discord Final Girls section in for you guys. I'm sorry, and then you could like suggest if there are cases you want
I need
us
to do that
to
too.
look at. Yeah, I'm terrible with that. You could suggest us like cases if you want to, or lore you want us to talk about or whatever. That would be cool too. All right, there you go. Is that you good
Yeah,
for
I'm done.
Anneliese here? Okay, let's get on into the next thing. Next up, we have an entirely too self-indulgent little game feature on my part. I can't help myself. There's a game about
Oh my
us.
god.
I
Oh
know.
my god.
You know, because you know why there's a game? Because we're special and awesome, and my mom says we're cool. But
Wow.
seriously, shout out to our viewer Nadia. Now, a quick disclaimer, the original iteration of this game would have been the sprite-based designs you see here. Nadia was forced to cancel this version, unfortunately. However, they replaced it with a more survival-intensive Doom mod version, for which the first level, a kind of demo experience, I think, or is that two different? You can clarify that in the chat, is available to try on itch.io. And I still wanted to showcase this early version, though, because I know you put a lot of work into it, Nadia, and I love these little
We did.
sprites. Yeah,
I really
there
did.
you go. Look at the tiny little minx and girly you can fit right in your pocket. Oh, it's adorable.
Oh my god.
I know.
So cute.
So cute. Now, look, you even got like a bloody face right in the middle. It's got Our bloody fucked up faces for the Doom mod. I love it. Yeah, and what you can play, what there is now is built as a mod for Doom 2. I believe you need to own Doom 2 and a copy of GZ Doom, which is software that enables the use of mods with Doom 2. Nadia actually
You get Doom 2 for like a few bucks on GOG as well.
Yeah, and I think that's where you actually have to buy it to make this work if you want to, I think. Nadia also very helpfully explains the process of installing and running the game on the site. If, like me, your mod skills are subpar, so go and check that out on Itch.io, and thank you again, Nadia. Beautiful. Thank you. And the highlights stuff, we really appreciate that too. So thank you.
Yeah, we really do. Thank you very much, Nadia.
Thank you. Okay, sit back, relax, because Minx and I are going to read to you. We're going to gently lull you to sleep with some choice SCP entries. This episode, we have SCP-035, aka the Possessive Mask. And what I thought, why don't you read the procedure, I'll read the description, and then we can take turns reading the addendums.
There's a lot of addendums to
right?
this one.
Well,
Yeah.
that's why I thought, yeah. So go ahead.
Okay, that's totally fine. All right, so this is item number SCP-035. The object class is Kata. Special containment procedures. SCP-035 is to be kept within a hermetically sealed glass case, no fewer than 10 centimeters, 4 inches thick. This case is to be contained within a steel, iron, and leaded shielded room at all times. Doors are to be triple locked at all times, with the exception of allowing personnel in or out. No fewer than 2 armed guards are to be posted at any time. Guards must remain outside at all times and are not allowed within the containment room under any circumstances. A trained psychologist is to remain on site at all times. Research personnel are not to touch SCP-035 at any time. SCP-035 must be moved to a new sealed case every 2 weeks. The previous case must be disposed of via SCP-101, as it shows no adverse reactions to SCP-035's corruption. Anyone who comes in contact with SCP-305 when it's in possession of a host is to be given immediate psychological evaluation.
Description. SCP-035 appears to be a white porcelain comedy mask, although at times it will change to tragedy. In these events, all existing visual records, such as photographs, video footage, even illustrations of SCP-035, automatically change to reflect its new appearance. A highly corrosive and degenerative viscous fluid constantly seeps from the eyes and mouth holes of SCP-035. Anything coming into contact with this substance slowly decays over a period of time, depending on the material until it has decayed completely into a pool of the original contaminant. Glass seems to react the slowest to the effects of the item, hence the construction choice of its immediate container. Living organisms that come into contact with the substance react much the same way, with no chance of recovery. Origin of the liquid is unknown. Liquid is only visible from the front and does not emerge or is even visible from the other side. Subjects within 1.5 to 2 meters, 5 to 6 feet of SCP-035, or in visual contact with it, experience a strong urge to put it on. When SCP-035 is placed on the face of an individual, an alternate brainwave pattern from SCP-035 overlaps that of the original host, effectively snuffing it out and causing brain death to the subject. Subject then claims to be the consciousness contained within SCP-035. The bodies of possessed subjects decay at a highly accelerated rate, eventually becoming little more than mummified corpses. Nevertheless, SCP-035 has demonstrated the ability to remain in cognitive control of a body experiencing severe structural damage, even if the subject's body literally decays to the point where motion is not mechanically possible. No effect is found to be had when placed on the face of an animal. Conversations with SCP-035 have proven to be informative. Researchers have learned various details about other SCP objects and history in general, as SCP-035 claims to have been at many momentous events. SCP-035 displays a highly intelligent and charismatic personality, being both amiable and flattering to all those who speak with it. SCP-035 has scored in the 99th percentile on all intelligence and aptitude tests administered to it, and appears to have a photographic memory. However, psychological analysis has discovered SCP-035 to possess a highly manipulative nature, capable of forcing sudden and profound changes to interviewers' psychological state. SCP-035 has proven to be highly sadistic, prompting some to commit suicide and transforming others into near-mindless servants with linguistic persuasion alone. SCP-035 has stated that it has intimate knowledge of the workings of the human mind and implied that it could change anyone's views if given enough time. Additional. SCP-035 was found in a sealed crypt in an abandoned house in Venice in 18 redacted.
Addendum 035-01. SCP-035 has been found to be able to possess anything that has a humanoid shape, including mannequins, corpses, and statues. SCP-035 has been able to motivate all into movement, removing the need to expose live subjects to SCP-035. Anything it possesses inevitably decays into motionless.
Addendum 035-02. SCP-035 has facilitated an escape attempt, convincing several of the research staff to aid it in its bid for freedom. Insurrection failed. All staff have been in contact with SCP-035 have been terminated, and mandatory psychiatric evaluations have been implemented for all personnel coming in contact with SCP-035.
Addendum 035-03. It's been determined that SCP-035 is capable of telepathy, whether or not it possesses a host, even penetrating the subconscious of others and using the knowledge it finds to its advantage. Extreme caution is advised when choosing subjects to converse with SCP-035.
Addendum 035-04. SCP-035 has expressed an interest in other SCPs, most notably SCP-517 and SCP-682. Dr. Redacted has expressed worry that should SCP-035 bond with either, their regenerative qualities would negate its corruption and give it a permanent host.
Addendum 035-05. After several more escape attempts and after reviewing SCP-035's incident record, High Command has ordered it to be permanently sealed within the facility and prohibited from being allowed any more hosts. Several personnel have protested against this, with some even erupting into violence. As a direct result, all personnel who have come in contact with SCP-035 have been terminated. Going forward, all personnel that deal with SCP-035 are to be rotated frequently, and contact is to be limited even to its dormant state, as little as possible.
Addendum 035-06. Personnel within 10 meters of SCP-035 have recently reported feeling unease, stating that they can hear unintelligible whispering. Several others have suffered from severe migraines. Object has been monitored, but there's no change in its dormant behavior, and no sounds have been recorded. The motion to reinstate SCP-035's host privileges have been brought up once more, if only on a temporary basis, to discover these new changes in the object's behavior. Denied.
Addendum 035-07. The walls of SCP-035's containment cell have suddenly begun secreting a black substance. Tests on the substance have revealed it to be human blood, although highly contaminated with several foreign and unknown agents. The substance is also corrosive, having a pH of 4.5, and prolonged exposure to the walls have proven to be detrimental to their structural integrity. More notably, it seems to be forming patterns on the walls. Several segments seem to be in paragraphs in various languages, including Italian, Latin, Greek, and Sanskrit. Translation is pending. Other segments appear to be diagrams depicting ritualistic sacrifice and mutilation, often for the arcane benefit of the person committing them. Several staff members have been shocked to note that all the sacrifices bear an uncanny resemblance to various personnel and their loved ones, often in conflicting positions. Researchers while in the room examining these newly formed patterns have complained of hearing loud whispering and a high-pitched, unnerving laugh at irregular intervals. Personnel in the section working daily near and around SCP-305's containment unit have suffered catastrophic moral damage, with all-time high in suicide rates in staff in the area, whether or not they have ever come in contact with SCP-035. The only change in SCP-035's dormant behavior is regarding its contained glass case. Degradation of the case has increased to a high degree, enough so that the glass will occasionally shatter, causing a wide dispersal of SCP-035's containment. This occurs quite often at the most inopportune times, so far resulting in 6 casualties and 3 fatalities, both of research and cleanup staff.
Addendum 035-08. In light of the mass suicide and homicide of members of the research team tasked with translating the passages garnered from SCP-035's containment cell, the morale damage in the area, and general loss of staff dealing with SCP-035 to either death or insanity, it has been decided to coat the inner and outer walls of its containment cell with SCP-148, which has proved well in the containment of SCP-132, see document 132-01, in order to hopefully block out the high levels of negativity being emitted by SCP-035.
Addendum 035-09. The use of SCP-148 has worked well, causing morale and suicide rates to return to near pre-SCP-035 rates. However, the material appears to facilitate the negativity within the cell, causing a veritable greenhouse effect inside. Personnel inside the cell have stated they feel a heavy sense of dread, fear, anger, and general depression, as well as hearing constant, nearly inaudible whispering upon immediate entry. A prolonged stay causes severe migraines, suicidal tendencies, heavy hemorrhaging of the blood vessels around the eyes and inside the mouth and nose, and general hostility to others. And for the whispering to increase to almost deafening volumes, intersected by a constant, mocking laughter. Exposure of more than 3 hours inevitably results in the subject falling into a deep psychosis and attempting to harm either themselves or others. Most spoke in Latin or Greek, despite the fact that several did not previously know how to speak the said languages beforehand. The presence of blood in both word and diagram formations has increased disproportionately, the walls becoming cluttered and the formations beginning to overlap each other. The substance has proven to become both difficult to clean and even more corrosive than was originally recorded, with a pH of roughly 2.4. General estimation gives the current walls a life of 2 months before they need replacement. It's becoming gradually more and more difficult to contain SCP-305, and the debate to reinstate its host privilege has once again come up. Denied.
Addendum 035-10. The walls, ceiling, and floor of SCP-035's containment cell have now been completely saturated in blood. All personnel entering and guarding the area must wear full hazmat protection suits. Constant cleaning efforts are being instated.
Addendum 035-11. The magnitude, intensity, and recurrence of the phenomena that occur within SCP-035's containment cell have increased to an alarming degree. The cell door has been known to become locked of its own accord while personnel are inside and unable to be opened for a period of time. Appendages form out of larger puddles of blood and often attempt to grab or harm personnel near them. Blurry apparitions have started appearing to staff. Electronic devices no longer work inside the cell, and the light cannot be turned on, though there is no physical reason why it does not work, forcing those entering to use non-electric based light sources. Cleaning measures have no discernible effect on the cell, and the walls are degrading at a very high rate, forcing them to be replaced within a week at best, though the blood makes it nearly impossible to properly achieve this. SCP-305 may have to be moved to a new cell entirely, with the old one sealed off and disengaged from the rest of the facility.
Well, that escalated quickly.
And that's SCP-035 by Kane Pathos Crow. Oh my god.
Thank you very much. Yeah, good one. A mask one. Yeah, special mask one. And that did go all kinds of tentacly and bloody ways. I like that. Well, that's why he's a Keter. There you go. All right. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. That is it. That's all we have for you tonight. Hope you enjoyed the reading. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for joining us too, Minx. Is you got something good planned? What are you up to?
I'm probably just going to chill out for a bit after this and play my Switch a bit, probably. I don't know what yet, but...
Get some hardcore Animal Cross. I'm going to do some Animal Crossing. That's what I'm going to do.
I've been playing Story of Seasons, which is like Harvest Moon type stuff, actually. It's been very chill.
Yeah, I like the kind of chill, relaxing stuff too, you know? All right. Thank you so much. We have another show coming up on the 23rd, I believe. Let me just check. Yes. Yeah. Same bad place and time and channel, but in 2 weeks.
27th? Yeah,
27th. Pardon me. I said 23rd. Yes. Yes, this is 27th. Same time here. I'll be uploading this to the channel. We'll also, I guess, maybe be uploading some clips or something. I'm not quite sure yet. And yeah. All right. That's it. Thank you. We'll see you next time.
See you later, guys.
Bye.